The clock on the wall showed 9:47 p.m. and Lisa's feet were screaming. She'd been on her feet for 12 straight hours, running between tables at Antonio's, one of the most expensive restaurants in downtown Chicago. Her black shoes had worn thin, months ago, but buying new ones meant choosing between shoes and groceries. The choice was always groceries. Lisa wiped down table 14 for the third time, making sure every water spot was gone. Mr. Antonio was strict about presentation, and she couldn't afford to lose this job. Not when her little brother Jake was depending on her. At 19, she'd become his guardian after their parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. Jake was only 14 then, scared and lost. Now he was 16, doing well in high school, and dreaming of becoming an engineer. Those dreams cost money she barely had. The restaurant was buzzing with its usual Friday night crowd. Wealthy couples celebrating anniversaries, business deals being made over expensive wine, and tourists trying to impress each other with the fancy atmosphere. Lisa had learned to blend into the background, to smile and nod at the right moments, to anticipate what people needed before they asked. It was a skill that came from necessity. She glanced across the dining room at the grand piano sitting in the corner. It was beautiful. A pristine white Steinway that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. The piano had been there as long as anyone could remember, covered in a thin layer of dust that the cleaning crew wasn't allowed to disturb. Management claimed it was broken, just there for decoration, but Lisa knew better. She'd seen the piano, tuner come in quietly every few months when the restaurant was closed. Music had been Lisa's life once. Her mother had started teaching her piano when she was 5 years old. By the time she was 12, she was playing in recitals and competitions. Her teacher, Mrs. Henderson, used to say she had magic in her fingers. Lisa had dreamed of studying music in college, maybe even performing professionally someday. But dreams don't pay rent or put food on the table. She hadn't touched a piano in almost 2 years. Sometimes she'd catch herself moving her fingers like she was playing. Muscle memory keeping the skills alive even when there was no instrument to practice on. The local music store had a piano, but she felt awkward going in just to play without buying anything. The community center had one too, but it was always occupied by kids taking lessons or seniors playing old songs. Lisa picked up another tray of dirty dishes and headed toward the kitchen. Her reflection caught in the mirror behind. The bar, tired eyes, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, the same white shirt and black pants she wore every day. She looked older than 19, worn down by responsibility and endless work shifts. "Order up for table 7, called Tony from the kitchen. Lisa grabbed the plates, lobster thermidor and filet mignon, dishes that cost more than she spent on food in a week. She delivered them with a smile, refilled water glasses, and checked if anyone needed anything else. The routine was automatic now. Near the piano, she noticed a man sitting alone at table 12. He'd been there for over an hour, barely touching his food. Most people came to Antonio's to see and be seen, to celebrate or impress someone. But this guy seemed lost in thought, staring out the window at the city lights. He was probably in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit that looked custom-made. His watch caught the light when he moved, definitely real gold. Rich people often ate alone at fancy restaurants, but something about this man seemed different. He wasn't on his phone making important calls or typing urgent emails like most of the wealthy customers. He just sat there, occasionally sipping his wine, looking almost sad despite being surrounded by luxury. Lisa approached his table carefully. "Can I get you anything else, sir? Maybe some dessert or coffee?" The man looked up and she noticed he had kind eyes despite the sadness in them. "Actually, yes. Could I get another glass of wine? The same red I've been drinking." "Of course," Lisa said, noting that he'd barely touched his dinner. The salmon on his plate was getting cold and the vegetables looked untouched. "Is everything okay with your meal? I can have the kitchen prepare something else if you'd prefer." He smiled, slightly. "The food is perfect, I'm just not very hungry tonight. Rough day at work, you know how it is." Lisa nodded, though she doubted his rough day was anything like hers. Still, sadness was sadness, whether you were rich or poor. "I'll get that wine for you right away." As she walked to the bar, She wondered what could make someone with obvious wealth look so troubled. Maybe money really couldn't buy happiness like people always said, though she'd be willing to test that theory if given the chance. The bartender, Miguel, was busy making cocktails for a large party that had just arrived. Lisa waited patiently, watching the organized chaos of the restaurant around her. Servers weaving between tables, the kitchen door swinging open and closed, the soft conversation of diners mixing with gentle background music from the sound system. Her eyes drifted back to the piano. What would it feel like to play again? Her fingers tingled just thinking about it. She remembered the weight of the keys, the way different pressures created different tones, the satisfaction of playing a difficult piece perfectly. Music had been her escape, her joy, her way of expressing feelings she couldn't put into words. "Earth to Lisa," Miguel said, sliding the glass of wine across the bar. "Where'd you go?" "Sorry," she said, taking the wine. "Just tired, I guess." She returned to table 12, setting the wine down carefully. The man looked up again, and this time he noticed her glance at the piano. "You play?" he asked, surprising her. "I used to," Lisa admitted before she could stop herself. She usually kept personal information private with customers, but something about his direct question caught her off guard. "Used to? What happened?" Lisa hesitated. This was definitely crossing the line from professional service into personal conversation. But the restaurant was quieter now, and her other tables were taken care of. "Life happened, I guess. I haven't played in almost 2 years. The man nodded like he understood. "That's a shame. Music is important. It feeds the soul in ways nothing else can." "Are you a musician?" Lisa asked. "Me? No, I can barely carry a tune. But I appreciate good music when I hear it. My daughter was a pianist." He paused, pain flickering across his face. She would have loved that piano. Lisa sensed there was more to that story, but she didn't push. Everyone had their grief to carry. She was about to excuse herself when the man looked directly at her, something shifting in his expression. "That piano over there," he said, nodding toward the corner. "Management says it's broken, but I've been watching this place for months. They maintain it, don't they?" Lisa was surprised by his observation. Most people never notice details like that. "I think so," she said carefully, not wanting to get in trouble for gossiping about restaurant business. The man smiled for the first time that evening, and Lisa realized he was making some kind of decision. There was a spark in his eyes now, like he'd just thought of something interesting, something that might change everything. The wealthy man leaned back in his chair, studying Lisa with curious eyes. She felt a bit uncomfortable under his gaze, wondering if she'd said something wrong. Rich customers could be unpredictable, and she needed this job too much to risk offending anyone. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lisa," she replied, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Is there anything else I can get for you, sir?" "Actually, yes, but first sit down for a minute." He gestured to the empty chair across from him. "You look exhausted." Lisa glanced around nervously. Mr. Antonio didn't like servers sitting with customers unless they were regulars who specifically requested it. But the restaurant was winding down, most tables had been cleared, and her manager was busy in the back office counting the night's receipts. "I really shouldn't," she said. "I'm still working." "Just for a minute," the man insisted. "My name is David, by the way, and I have a proposition for you." Something in his tone made Lisa pause. She looked around once more, then carefully sat down on the edge of the chair, ready to jump up if needed. "What kind of proposition?" David smiled, and she noticed his whole face changed when he did. The sadness seemed to lift, replaced by something that looked almost mischievous. "Tell me about your piano playing. How long did you study?" 14 years, Lisa answered automatically, then caught herself. "But like I said, I don't play anymore. I work here now." 14 years is a long time. You must have been good. Lisa felt heat creep up her neck. She wasn't used to talking about herself, especially not about the dreams she'd given up. "I was okay, I guess. I won some local competitions when I was younger. My teacher thought I had potential." "What happened?" Why did you stop? The question hit harder than she expected. Lisa looked down at her hands, calloused now from carrying heavy trays instead of soft from piano practice. My parents died in an accident 2 years ago. I had to drop out of college to take care of my little brother. This job pays the bills. David's expression softened. I'm sorry for your loss. That must have been incredibly difficult. We manage, Lisa said quickly, not wanting pity. Jake's doing great in school. He wants to be an engineer. And what did you want to be? The question hung in the air between them. Lisa hadn't let herself think about her old dreams in months. It hurt too much. It doesn't matter now, she said finally. Humor me. David pressed gently. What was the dream? Lisa sighed, glancing at the piano across the room. I wanted to study music therapy, help people heal through music. My mom was a nurse and she always said music and medicine both had the power to heal hearts. David followed her gaze to the piano. That's beautiful. Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. Lisa's voice got quiet. She used to say I had magic in my fingers when I played. That music flowed through me differently than other people. I bet she was right. David picked up his wine glass, swirling the liquid thoughtfully. Can I ask you something that might sound crazy? Lisa raised an eyebrow. Okay. That piano over there. If it was working, do you think you could still play it after 2 years away? Probably. I think so. Some things you don't forget, like riding a bike. Lisa wondered where this conversation was heading. Why? David leaned forward, his eyes sparkling with an idea that was clearly forming. Because I think that piano is perfectly fine, and I think this restaurant is full of people who have no idea they're about to witness something special. I don't understand. Here's my crazy proposition, David said, his voice getting more animated. I bet you could sit down at that piano right now and play something so beautiful, so moving that every person in this room would stop what they're doing just to listen. Lisa's heart started beating faster. Mr. David, I can't just... I'm not. Just talking about playing, he interrupted. I'm talking about making a bet. A real bet with real money. Now Lisa was definitely confused. What kind of bet? David reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. Lisa caught a glimpse of several credit cards and what looked like a thick stack of cash. I bet you $5,000 that you can play something on that piano that will make this entire restaurant go completely silent. Lisa's mouth fell open. $5,000? That was more money than she made in 3 months. That was enough to cover Jake's school expenses for the whole year, maybe even buy him the laptop he needed for his engineering classes. $5,000? She whispered. $5,000, David confirmed. But here's the catch. It has to be something that moves people. Something that makes them stop eating, stop talking, stop everything just to listen. If you can do that, the money is yours. Lisa's mind was racing. It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. And if I can't? If people just ignore me or if the piano really is broken? Then you don't owe me anything. You go back to work, and we pretend this conversation never happened. Why would you do this? Lisa asked suspiciously. You don't even know me. David was quiet for a moment, staring into his wine. Let's just say I've been having a rough year. I lost someone very important to me, and I've been feeling pretty hopeless about everything. But talking to you tonight, hearing about your dreams and your strength, it reminds me that there's still beauty in the world. Sometimes we just need to take a chance on it. Lisa felt her chest tighten. She could hear the sincerity in his voice, see the pain he was trying to hide. This wasn't just about money or entertainment. This was about something deeper. But what if Mr. Antonio gets mad? What if I get fired? Leave that to me, David said confidently. I'll handle any problems with management. This is between you and me. Lisa looked across the restaurant at the piano. Her fingers were already tingling, imagining the feel of the keys. She could almost hear the music in her head, pieces she'd memorized years ago that were still there, waiting. But it had been so long. What if she'd forgotten more than she thought? What if her technique was rusty? What if she embarrassed herself in front of all these people? I don't know, she said, her voice shaking slightly. It's been 2 years. I might not be any good anymore. Music like yours doesn't just disappear, David said firmly. It might be sleeping, but it's still there. I can see it in your eyes. When you look at that piano, Lisa bit her lip, torn between fear and excitement. $5,000 would change everything for her and Jake. But more than that, she realized she missed music desperately. She missed the feeling of creating something beautiful, of losing herself in melodies and harmonies. You really think I can do it? She asked quietly. David smiled that warm smile again. I think you're going to surprise yourself, and everyone else in this room. Lisa took a deep breath, her heart pounding so hard she was sure David could hear it. She looked around, the restaurant one more time. About 20 people were still dining, lost in their own conversations and meals. The soft background music played from hidden speakers, barely audible above the gentle chatter. Okay, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Okay, I'll do it. David's face lit up. Really? Really? Lisa stood up, her legs feeling shaky. But I need a minute to mentally prepare, and we need to check if that piano actually works. Deal, David said, standing as well. This is going to be incredible. As they walked toward the piano together, Lisa wondered if she was making the biggest mistake of her life, or taking the first step toward getting it back. Lisa's hands trembled as she and David approached the piano. Each step felt like walking toward a cliff, not knowing if she'd fly or fall. The white Steinway looked even more beautiful up close, its polished surface reflecting the warm restaurant, lights like a mirror. Wait, she whispered, suddenly stopping. What if it really is broken? What if management lied about maintaining it? David placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Then we'll know soon enough. But I have a feeling we're about to discover something wonderful. Lisa reached out and gently lifted the piano's lid. The keys were pristine, not a speck of dust on them. Someone had definitely been taking care of this instrument. She pressed middle C softly, and the note rang out clear and perfect. Her heart skipped a beat. It's tuned, she breathed, pressing a few more keys. The sound was incredible, rich and warm, exactly what you'd expect from a high-end piano. It's perfectly tuned. A few diners at nearby tables glanced over curiously, wondering what the waitress was doing at the decorative piano. Lisa felt their eyes on her and suddenly wanted to run back to the safety of taking orders and refilling water glasses. Having second thoughts? David asked gently. Lisa nodded, not trusting her voice. 2 years felt like a lifetime away from music. What if her fingers didn't remember? What if she made a fool of herself in front of all these people? What piece are you thinking of playing? David asked. I don't know yet, Lisa admitted. I used to have a whole repertoire memorized, but I'm not sure what's still there. She sat down on the piano bench, adjusting the height slightly. The familiar position felt strange after so long. Her back straight, feet flat on the floor, hands hovering over the keys. It was like greeting an old friend after years of separation. Take your time, David said, pulling out his phone. Mind if I record this? I have a feeling this is going to be special. Lisa's stomach fluttered. You really think people will stop and listen? I think you're about to find out. Lisa closed her eyes and let her fingers rest on the keys. Slowly, muscle memory began to return. Her hands found familiar positions, and suddenly she knew exactly what to play. Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the piece that had won her the state competition when she was 17, the piece her mother had loved most. She began with the softest touch, the opening notes, floating through the air like whispered secrets. The melody was gentle, almost questioning, as if asking permission to exist in this space filled with clinking glasses and quiet conversation. At the table closest to the piano, an elderly couple looked up from their dessert. The woman touched her husband's arm, and they both turned toward Lisa. The notes continued, growing slightly stronger, more confident. Lisa felt the music flowing through her fingers like it had never left. Every phrase came back to her perfectly. The delicate ornaments, the subtle dynamic changes, the way Chopin wove emotion into every measure. She'd forgotten how it felt to create something beautiful, to channel feelings into sound. A businessman. At table 6 paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. Caught by the unexpected melody, his dinner companion stopped mid-sentence and followed his gaze to the piano. The nocturne built to its first climax, Lisa's right hand singing the melody while her left hand provided a gentle, rocking accompaniment. The music painted pictures. In the air, moonlight on water, lovers walking through gardens, the bittersweet beauty of memories. More heads turned. Conversations began to quiet. The couple at table 3 set down their wine glasses and turned their chairs to face the piano better. Lisa opened her eyes and saw that she had an audience. Instead of panic, she felt a surge of joy. This was why she'd loved music. This connection, this ability to touch people's hearts without saying a word. She smiled slightly and let the music carry her deeper into the piece. The nocturne's middle section was more complex, full of rapid runs and delicate flourishes. Lisa's fingers danced across the keys, executing passages she hadn't played in 2 years as if she'd practiced them yesterday. The music demanded attention now, no longer asking permission but claiming its rightful place in the room. A young couple near the window had stopped eating entirely. The woman had tears in her eyes, and her boyfriend reached across the table to hold her hand. They watched Lisa play with the kind of wonder people usually reserved for sunsets or newborn babies. The server's station had gone quiet too. Miguel, the bartender, was polishing the same glass over and over, completely absorbed in the music. 2 other waitresses had stopped their closing duties to listen. Even some of the kitchen staff had emerged from the back, drawn by the unexpected concert. David stood beside the piano, filming with his phone, but Lisa could see he was as mesmerized as everyone else. His earlier sadness had completely disappeared, replaced by something that looked like amazement. The nocturne moved into its final section, and Lisa felt emotions she'd buried for 2 years rising to the surface. The music became more than notes on a page. It became her story. The loss of her parents, the weight of responsibility, the dreams she'd set aside, the love she had for her brother, the hope she still carried despite everything. Her touch on the keys grew more expressive, more personal. This wasn't just Chopin anymore. This was Lisa, pouring her heart out through a composer's masterpiece. The melody soared and dipped, whispered and cried, laughed and mourned all at once. The restaurant had gone completely silent except for the piano. Every conversation had stopped. Every fork had been set down. Even the background music from the sound system seemed to have been turned off, though Lisa was too lost in her performance to notice. She played the final phrases with exquisite tenderness, each note hanging in the air before dissolving into the next. The nocturne ended as quietly as it had begun, the last chord fading slowly into silence. For a moment, nobody moved. The silence stretched on, pregnant with emotion and surprise. Lisa sat at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys, afraid to break the spell. Then someone started clapping. It was the elderly woman at the closest table, tears streaming down her face. Her applause was joined by her husband, then by the businessman at table 6, then by the young couple by the window. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted in applause. But this wasn't polite, obligatory clapping. This was the kind of applause that comes from deep appreciation, from being truly moved. People were standing up, some wiping their eyes, others calling out "bravo" and "beautiful." Lisa turned on the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. She saw faces she'd served all evening looking at her with new eyes, not as their waitress, but as an artist who had just given them an unexpected gift. David was beaming, still recording as the applause continued. He leaned down and whispered, "I think you just won our bet." Lisa laughed, a sound of pure joy mixed with disbelief. She had done it. She had played for the first time in 2 years, and it had been even better than she remembered. The music was still there, still part of her, still magic. The applause went on for nearly a full minute, accompanied by calls for an encore. Lisa looked around the room at all these strangers who had become her audience, her supporters, her witnesses to this moment of rediscovering herself. She turned back to the piano, her hands finding the keys again. If they wanted an encore, she had plenty more music to share. The applause was still echoing in Lisa's ears when she turned back to the piano keys. Her heart was racing, but not from nerves anymore. This was pure adrenaline, the kind that comes from doing something you were born to do. The audience was calling for more, and for the first time in 2 years, Lisa felt truly alive. She placed her fingers on the keys again, this time choosing something completely different. Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece that had always felt like painting with sound. As the first gentle notes floated through the restaurant, she noticed people settling back into their chairs, but nobody returned to their meals. All eyes remained on her. The moonlight melody washed over the room like a gentle wave. Lisa closed her eyes again, letting the music transport her to a place where bills didn't matter, where loss didn't ache, where dreams were still possible. Her technique was flawless, muscle memory guiding her through every delicate phrase as if she'd never stopped practicing. At table 8, a middle-aged businessman pulled out his phone, not to check emails but to record this unexpected concert. His wife, who had been scrolling through social media moments before, now sat transfixed, her phone forgotten on the table. David moved to get a better angle with his recording, but Lisa was too lost in the music to notice. The Debussy piece required a different kind of touch, softer, more impressionistic, like capturing the essence of moonlight itself. Her fingers barely seemed to press the keys, yet every note rang clear and perfect. "Is that really our waitress?" whispered a woman at table 12 to her date. "She plays like a professional." Her companion, a music teacher at the local high school, nodded in amazement. "Better than professional. That's conservatory-level playing. Maybe even concert level." As Clair de Lune reached its dreamy conclusion, Lisa transitioned seamlessly into something more passionate, Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor. The dramatic opening chords filled the restaurant like thunder, causing several people to gasp. This was a completely different side of her playing, powerful, intense, technically demanding. The Russian composer's music required everything Lisa had. Her hands flew across the keyboard, executing rapid passages and thunderous chords that seemed impossible for someone so small. The prelude told a story of struggle and triumph, of darkness giving way to light. It was the perfect piece for someone who had survived tragedy and was finding her way back to joy. Miguel, the bartender, had stopped pretending to work entirely. He stood behind the bar with his mouth slightly open, watching Lisa's hands move with the precision of a master craftsman. He'd worked at Antonio's for 8 years and had never seen anything like this. The kitchen door kept swinging open as more staff members emerged to listen. Carlos, the head chef, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, a huge smile on his face. He'd been working since 6 in the morning, but suddenly he wasn't tired anymore. As the Rachmaninoff built to its climactic moment, Lisa felt tears on her cheeks. She wasn't sad. These were tears of pure emotion, of reconnecting with a part of herself she thought she'd lost forever. The music was pouring out of her like water from a broken dam, 2 years of suppressed creativity finally finding its voice. The prelude's final chords crashed through the restaurant with the force of a symphony orchestra. When the last note faded, the silence was even deeper than before. Then someone started clapping slowly, deliberately, the kind of applause reserved for truly extraordinary performances. It was Mr. Antonio himself. Lisa's eyes flew open to see her boss standing at the edge of the dining room, still wearing his chef's apron. His usually stern face was soft with emotion, and he was clapping with the reverence of someone who recognized true artistry. The rest of the audience joined in with even more enthusiasm than before. Several people were standing, and Lisa heard someone shout "Bravo" from the back of the room, but the surprises weren't over. The elderly woman from the closest table stood up and approached the piano. Lisa recognized her now, Mrs. Chen, who came in every Friday with her husband. She'd been serving them for months but had never really talked to them beyond taking their order. "My dear," Mrs. Chen said, her voice shaking with emotion, That was absolutely magnificent. I'm the director of the Chicago Youth Symphony, and I haven't heard playing like that in years. Lisa's mouth fell open. You're... what? I've been coming here every week for 2 years, and I had no idea we had such talent serving our food. Mrs. Chen reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. I don't usually do this, but would you consider auditioning for our adult ensemble? We have a concert next month, and we desperately need a soloist. Before Lisa could respond, the businessman from table 6 was standing beside Mrs. Chen. Excuse me, he said. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm Robert Walsh from Walsh Entertainment. We represent classical musicians for concerts and recording contracts. He held out his own business card. That performance was absolutely extraordinary. Have you ever considered a professional career? Lisa couldn't find words. This felt like a dream, the kind she used to have in high school when she imagined her future in music. David stepped forward, still holding his phone. Gentlemen, lady, I think our pianist might need a moment to process all this. But more people were approaching the piano. The music teacher from table 12 introduced herself and offered private lessons. A woman who turned out to be a music therapist, Lisa's old dream career, wanted to discuss opportunities at the children's hospital where she worked. Lisa felt overwhelmed by the sudden attention. An hour ago, she was just a tired waitress hoping to make it through another shift. Now she was surrounded by people offering her the career she'd thought was lost forever. This is incredible, she whispered to David. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, David said with a grin. You've got real talent, Lisa. These people recognize it. Mr. Antonio approached the group, and Lisa braced herself for trouble. She'd basically stopped working to give an impromptu concert, and she wouldn't blame him for being angry. Instead, her boss surprised her again. Lisa, he said, his thick Italian accent making her name sound musical. In 30 years of running this restaurant, nothing like this has ever happened. You have turned my dining room into a concert hall. I'm sorry, Mr. Antonio. I know I should have been working, but... Sorry? He looked genuinely confused. Why sorry? You have given my customers an experience they will remember forever. Look around. Lisa looked. Every single person in the restaurant was smiling. The atmosphere had completely transformed from a typical Friday night dinner service into something magical, something special. I have a proposition for you, Mr. Antonio continued. What if you played here every Friday night? Not as a waitress, but as our house pianist. I can pay you more than you make serving tables, and you can still keep your regular shifts if you want. Lisa's head was spinning. In the span of one evening, her entire life had changed direction. The piano bench she was sitting on felt like a launching pad, ready to propel her toward a future she'd never dared to dream possible again. She looked at David, who was beaming with pride like a father watching his daughter graduate. She thought about Jake at home, probably doing homework, unaware that his sister's life was about to get so much better. Can I think about all this? She asked the group of people surrounding her. Of course, Mrs. Chen said kindly. But don't think too long. Talent like yours shouldn't be hidden. As the crowd began to disperse back to their tables, Lisa remained at the piano, her hands resting on the keys that had just changed everything. Lisa sat at the piano for a few more minutes, her hands trembling slightly as she processed everything that had just happened. The restaurant was slowly returning to normal, but she could feel eyes still on her, hear whispered conversations about her performance. Her uniform suddenly felt strange, like she was wearing a costume that no longer fit who she was becoming. David approached the piano bench, his phone finally tucked away. So, he said with a smile, I believe we had a bet. Lisa laughed, the sound coming out a bit shaky. I completely forgot about the money. This whole thing feels like a dream. Well, this dream just earned you $5,000. David reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. I had this prepared before we even started because honestly, I knew you were going to blow everyone away. Lisa stared at the envelope like it might disappear if she touched it. You really knew? How could you know? David sat down beside her on the piano bench. Because I've spent my whole life around music even though I can't play a note myself. My daughter was a pianist too. She had that same look in her eyes when she talked about music, like it was the most important thing in the world. Had? Lisa asked gently, picking up on the past tense. David's smile faded slightly. She died in a car accident 3 years ago. Brain cancer at 22. She was just starting her professional career when she got sick. He paused, looking at the piano keys. Tonight, watching you play, hearing that passion in your music, it reminded me of her. It reminded me why music matters so much. Lisa felt her heart break a little for this kind man who had just changed her life. I'm so sorry, that must be incredibly hard. It has been. But tonight, for the first time in 3 years, I felt joy listening to music again. You gave me that gift, Lisa. The $5,000 is nothing compared to what you've given me. Lisa looked down at the envelope in her hands. $5,000 would solve so many problems. But David's words meant even more than the money. She'd forgotten that music could heal not just the person playing, but everyone listening too. There's something else, David said, reaching into his other pocket. I wasn't completely honest about who I am. He handed her a business card, and Lisa's eyes widened as she read it. David Richardson, CEO of Richardson Music Foundation. She'd heard of this foundation. They provided scholarships for young musicians and funded music programs in schools. You run the Richardson Foundation? Guilty as charged, David said with a sheepish grin. I started it after my daughter died to help other young musicians achieve their dreams. And Lisa, I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to study music therapy at any school you choose. Lisa's mouth fell open. What? Are you serious? Completely serious. The foundation covers tuition, living expenses, even childcare costs if needed. Your brother could come with you, and we'd make sure he has everything he needs to finish high school and start college wherever you end up studying. Lisa felt like the world was spinning. But why? You barely know me. Because talent like yours deserves to be nurtured. Because your dream of helping people heal through music is exactly what this world needs. And because David's voice got softer. My daughter would have wanted me to help someone like you. Tears started flowing down Lisa's cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. The offer stands whenever you're ready. Mr. Antonio appeared beside them, having finished talking to the other customers. Lisa, I hope you don't mind, but I've been thinking about my offer too. The Friday night piano job. More than that. Mr. Antonio sat down across from them. My grandfather built this restaurant 60 years ago. He always said it should be a place where art and food come together, where people create memories. Tonight, you reminded me of his vision. Lisa wiped her eyes, trying to focus on what he was saying. I want to expand the idea. What if we had live music several nights a week? What if we turned this into a place where musicians like you could perform while they're building their careers? I could offer you a manager position. You'd coordinate the music program, perform regularly, and still have time for your studies. Do you really trust me with something like that? After tonight, absolutely. You understand music, you understand people, and you understand hard work. That's exactly what this job needs. Lisa looked around the restaurant with new eyes. She could imagine it filled with music every night, giving other struggling artists the same chance she'd just received. That sounds amazing. Mrs. Chen approached their little group, her business card still in Lisa's pocket. I hope I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to add something to my earlier offer. Of course, Lisa said, though her head was already spinning. From too many opportunities. The youth symphony position comes with something I didn't mention. We have a partnership with the local college's music therapy program. If you performed with us, you could start taking classes part-time right away, even before you decide about the full scholarship. Lisa looked at all these people who had been strangers an hour ago, and were now offering to change her entire life. This is all so overwhelming. I never imagined anything like this could happen. Good things happen to people who deserve them, David said simply. And you, Lisa, deserve all of this and more. Lisa's phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Working late tonight? I saved you some pizza. She smiled, thinking about her little brother at home. Jake had sacrificed so much too, never complaining when she had to work double shifts, always encouraging her even when things got tough. Now she could give him the future he deserved. "I have one condition," Lisa said, looking at each of them. "Whatever I decide, my brother Jake has to be part of it. He's the reason I've worked so hard, and he deserves every opportunity I get." "Of course," David said immediately. "Family comes first." Mr. Antonio nodded. "The job offer includes benefits for both of you." Mrs. Chen smiled. "The symphony would love to meet your brother. We have programs for young people interested in music too." Lisa stood up from the piano bench, still holding David's envelope and the stack of business cards she'd collected. The restaurant was nearly empty now, just a few customers finishing their dessert and coffee. The magical evening was winding down, but Lisa knew this was really a beginning. "I need to get home and tell Jake about tonight," she said. "And I need time to process all of this. But I want you all to know that you've given me hope I didn't think I could have anymore." David stood up and shook her hand. "Take all the time you need, but don't let this moment slip away. You're meant for great things, Lisa." As she walked toward the staff room to get her things, Lisa caught her reflection in the mirror behind the bar. She looked different somehow. Not just tired from a long shift, but alive with possibility. The girl looking back at her had dreams again. 3 months later, Lisa performed her first concert as a soloist with the Chicago Youth Symphony. Jake sat in the front row, wearing his first suit and beaming with pride. David was there too, along with Mr. Antonio and half the staff from the restaurant. But the best part was afterward, when a little girl in the hospital where Lisa had started her music therapy internship told her that the piano music helped her feel brave during her treatment. Lisa finally understood what her mother had meant about having magic in her fingers. The magic wasn't just in the music, it was in the healing, the hope, and the courage to believe that dreams really can come true.